tomorrow, get now. Go ahead.
Hey everybody, today I'm going to make the longest quick tips video ever, but there's a reason, so bear with me, okay? I play video games when I'm not painting. A lot of us do. And if you get on YouTube and start looking up content for video games, there's a whole slew of videos that are things you wish you knew. 10 things you wish you knew before you played this, 20 things you have to know before playing this. And it got me thinking that I should go around the studio, I should look at a handful of things that could be their own individual quick tips video, and put them all together. You know, things I wish I knew when I started in this hobby, things I've figured out along the way, things that I picked up and put my own spin on, things that I can share that maybe help some of you. So without further ado, here are 7 things I wish I knew when I got into this hobby. Okay, at your local hardware store, there's got to be a section that has wooden dowel rods. They might be called something different, but what you want to find in this area that has all these wooden rods are these 1.5 inch, 1 3/8 inch, 2 inch. This is the area you want to be looking. This is typically what's going to be most comfortable for people to hold in their hands. If you need to hold something slightly larger, maybe one of these 2 inch is going to fit your hand better. Personally, I like these 1.5 inch. This is what I use for all of mine. And you can see there, the price is $10 for one of these. It's 48 inches long. So make sure you grab one with a barcode. It sucks to have to go back and get another one. But when you get this home, I mean, again, $10 for this. It's 48 inches long. You could put this, if you have access to one, you could put this in a miter box and cut this down by hand, or ask someone to help you. If you don't have tools, find someone who does, a friend or a relative. But if you can, find somebody who's got something like this miter saw or a chop saw. It's going to take you minutes compared to half a day. But go through, and I mark mine at 3 inches, so I can get 16 lengths out of one piece of dowel rod. So some real quick and dirty math here, $10, 16 lengths, that makes them 63 cents a piece. And just chop them down. You don't have to worry about them being pretty. We'll sand off the edges here in a second. But yeah, 63 cents for 16. So while I'm sanding these with some rough sandpaper, we'll do some more rough and dirty math. If you had to buy 16 Citadel holders and could score them for $10 a piece, you'd still be paying $160 for this many holders. So after I get them sanded, I take them upstairs to my office, and I don't want a ton of junk getting all over my desk. So one of the last things that I do is take some Clorox wipes or a wet rag or something, and I wipe them down to try to get any last little bits of stuff, little burrs, little tiny bits of sand, sandpaper, whatever. Clean them up, and then they're ready to use. Stick them in a drawer, they sit there until you need them, like a lot of stuff. Put it off to the side, find a drawer to stick them in. The 3 inch height works really, really well for this drawer. All the drawers that I have around my desk, they all fit really well. And you can see I have a ton of them in there. I've been doing this since day one. I think this is the 7th or 8th rod that I've cut down. So I've got hundreds of these literally around my office. And when it's time to use them, you have a lot of freedom. I use blue poster tack. Some people love it, some people hate it. I've found that if you knead it in your fingers and warm it up first, and get it really sticky like an old piece of gum, stick it to the bottom of the miniature first. And then when you're ready to, you want to just push down on the base, not the miniature. I'm not telling you to twist the miniature and snap it off the base at the ankles. But get that blue poster tack on the bottom nice and warm and gooey. Get it stuck on the bottom of the miniature really well. And then when you go to stick it on the dowel rod, like I said, you want to set it down on the table in front of you and then just push down. It might look like I'm pushing on her cape, and I'm not really. The most of the pressure is down around the bottom, using my thumbs to kind of twist and push and get that really stuck on there really well. And in the years I've been doing this, if you take the time to clean the miniature first, make sure the dowel rods are clean, and put it on properly, they don't fall off. If you need to get underneath it, you can use any kind of little tool to push some of the stuff under there. If you start having some of the blue poster tack come out and you're worried that it's going to overlap the edge of the base of the miniature, you can tuck it under there, use a tool, a paper clip, anything that you've got handy. There's tons of little tools. We all have crap laying around our desk we can use. Tuck that under there, it's no problem. But I've never had a problem with these. I very rarely have I ever had one fall off. I mean, you can shake them, wiggle them, whack them. I'm putting a good amount of force there, and Nero's not falling off this pedestal, so I guess I'm going to have to go ahead and paint them now. But yeah, this is quick and easy, and you can have a ton of them laying around your desk. And other than like Citadel holders, like there's 15 in this shot right here. That would be 150 miniature holders, but you can see some have poster tack, some have things drilled and pinned to them, some have other little square bases glued to them. They're very versatile. You can do a lot with them. They're chunks of wood. They're bottom heavy, and you can pretty much beat on them forever. So wooden dowel rods is my choice, my go-to for miniature holders. So maybe that'll help somebody. Try it out. It's a hell of a lot cheaper than anything else you can buy. Okay, makeup brushes. I know it sounds strange. I'm not saying that good brushes aren't worth buying, but do some math here real quick. 32 pieces for $8 makes these 25 cents a piece. I am not saying to get rid of all your nice brushes. I'm not saying to use these. I'm saying use these for the garbage work, for dry brushing when you're going to abuse the crap out of it. Why would you pay $5, $7, $10 for a brush that you're going to destroy, literally? If you're going to cut one up to use it for spraying blood or spatter effects. If you're going to use brushes for destructive purposes, then don't use your good brushes. Again, I got 32 of these for $8 on Amazon, and they're junk, they're cheap, they're garbage from wherever. But there's a lot of pieces here that can do a lot of different things. So bear with me as I unpack these. First and foremost, the biggest one, these are great for dusting. If you've got miniatures sitting on your desk that are getting dusty, or, you know, in your IKEA glass shelf that everything gets dusty anyway, these bigger brushes are perfect for dusting. They're soft, they're gentle, they're not going to tear up your miniature. They shouldn't even flake off, you know, any kind of texture or earth or anything like that. So set those bigger ones off to the side. They're perfect for dusting. And when you do commission work, sometimes it's nice to send one along and tell them, here, use this to dust your pieces. So yeah, the larger brushes are great for dusting and cleanup kind of work. You could probably use them for dusting on pigments. There's tons of uses. You can come up with whatever you want to do with these. They're so cheap. Again, 25 cents a piece. If you destroy it, I mean, you need to use a giant brush with super glue, have at it, man. It costs $0.25. Throw it in the trash when you're done. So the bigger bristled brushes, I kind of set off to the side for dusting, clean up, that kind of stuff. But unpacking all the rest of these and trying to sort them out, you can see that there's a ton, and they're mostly in kind of a dough hoof shape, or just a rounded end shape rather, that, you know, ranging from 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, a little bit bigger. So I try to sort them out and group them into bigger and smaller. And all these are going to be dry brushes for me. So when I want to sit down and dry brush red and yellow and orange and try to do crazy dry brush flames all at the same time, I can have 3 nice big soft bristled brushes and not worry if I tear them up. They're not my super fancy expensive brushes that I buy from wherever else for the detail work and the stuff that matters. There's a lot of other bristles in here, other brushes in here, like these two. They're, I guess, like for eyeshadow, they're rubber tipped. I use these for erasers. If I make a mistake and the paint's fresh, you can dip it in water and carefully rub your mistake away. There's a use for these if you can, you know, stick them off to the side. It does come with like a comb. I've used it to get knots out of brushes before. These two right here are perfectly round. These would be great for stippling if you're trying to get into some of the more complicated stippling effects. So I have a handful of those tucked away that I'll use someday. And the rest of these are all kind of small. Some of them are flat edged. Some of them are, again, just rounded edged. But if you need to get into a smaller space and do a little bit more of a controlled dry brush, or you're trying to put on some pigment powders, maybe do mud all along the bottom of something, using one of these flat brushes horizontal along the bottom might be easier than trying to use a round brush. There's a ton of uses for these, and they were cheap enough that if you make a mistake or destroy the brush, you're not really out that much. I mean, yeah, I still rinse mine, I wash them, I take care of them. They're not just disposable, but I'm saving my nice Monument brushes, my Rosemary and Company brushes, all of my nicer brushes. I don't worry about tearing them up because I can order these cheap and easy and go through them like toilet paper. So makeup brushes are your friend. Okay, so another short one here, health and beauty products. You can find a ton of these and repurpose them for different uses around your hobby desk. First and foremost, I use these pointed Q-tips all the time. I'm constantly making a mess, putting on too much wash, gobbing something up, and it's nice to be able to use those and get into the recesses. They're also good for helping to put decals on, all kinds of things. Keep a few boxes of these around. You never know what you're going to use it for. These next things are dental picks. People use them to get junk out from in between their teeth. I use them to clean my airbrush nozzles and tips, and you can use them, for scratching, weathering. You can even bend that tip where the bristles are. Those are really useful and they're really cheap. Next up, makeup foam sponges. And my wife saw all this stuff in the cart and she was like, why are you buying makeup stuff? And I was like, don't worry about it. These sponges are great. You can use them for all kinds of stuff. You can use them for cleaning your airbrush. You don't have to worry about the needle getting dinged at the end. You can use them for weathering, stippling, all kinds of stuff, and they're cheap. I want to say that whole package of like 100 was like $2-3. Next up, a no-brainer, a toothbrush. I use it for all different things. Used it for glue, I've used it for basing stuff, but most often I use toothbrushes for a spattering effect, especially blood or grime. You can load it up and use that kind of flicking motion. And aside from, just run-of-the-mill health and beauty products, if you have access to any kind of weird medical stuff, you can find all kinds of weird stuff. Like these are called eye spears, and those are tiny little bits of sponge that instantly suck up any kind of liquid you put them near. And these microscopic scalpel blades, they're really tiny. A lot of times if blades are brought into the OR, they can't be put away even if they're not used. So stuff like that can get repurposed. They make way better scrapers than anything you can buy, and you can get into all kinds of little nooks and crannies. So health and beauty products, medical stuff, anything you can get your hands on and repurpose, you can usually find this stuff really cheap and come up with all kinds of creative uses around your desk. Okay, this is another kind of strange one, but bottles and containers are your friend. I'm not telling you to be a pack rat. I'm not trying to turn anybody into a hoarder, but you would be amazed at how you can repurpose stuff that you throw away all the time. With the exception of the little row of pots in the front, everything in this picture is stuff that I bought for use around my house. These bigger ones in the back had peanuts and pretzels and stuff in them. This one over on the right that's a tall cylinder, I think that had lemonade stuff that my kids go through like you would not believe. And then some of the stuff in the middle you've kind of already seen before. These I picked up at Hobby Lobby for a very specific purpose, and they were super cheap, but it's for grinding up pigments. I'll do a video on that someday. But when you do your own pigments and you grind up pastels to get colors that you can't buy, you don't want to throw that out when you're done. So these little pots, I think I got 6 rows of 6 for like 99 cents. And then every time I grind up a color of pigment, I can store it in these little containers, store it away for later, and then I don't waste any of that pigment powder that I took the time to, grind it down. So that's the only one that I bought in a store. But these, we all know what these are. People hate these. People transfer their paint out of these intentionally, but there is still a use. If you need to carry a handful of little skulls around, or you've got some tiny little pieces, basing material rocks you want to take with you, whatever. These bottles, I use these a lot. A lot of people buy these on Amazon and repurpose, stuff like this. We were just talking about knocking these pots over, repurposing them. Pour that wash into a bottle, rip the label off the pot, throw the pot in the trash if you want. I keep mine, so that way I have little containers for who knows what. But other than repurposing and moving paint or washes out of pots that don't work, every time I try to do static grass, I kept mixing up fresh water and PVA and dumping it out or spilling it. And I'm like, duh, put it in a bottle. So print out little labels, and you'd be amazed at the stuff. If you make a huge batch of a colored wash you want to save, and you made too much, throw it in a bottle, hang on to it, throw a label on it. These bottles in the middle, I used to be a smoker. I used vaping to quit, and all the e-juice that I was buying, all the liquid vape juice, yes, wash these out. No, don't let kids play with them. Don't be stupid. But you can repurpose these. I was going through these bottles and I realized I was throwing them away every 2-3 weeks and going and buying more. And I'm like, duh, save the bottles. So I've got some with water and flow aid. I've got glazed medium. You can put whatever you want. Big batches of washes, mediums, your home brews, whatever it is. And if you're buying these bottles weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, whatever, and you're throwing them out, just find another use for them. If you're buying things consistently and throwing them out, that's stupid. These were because of my kids. These ones on the right, again, that's full of lemonade packets. And this was full of sprinkles. I think from Christmas when we were making cookies, we ended up wiping out all the sprinkles. And I'm like, you know what? You could put static grass in that. You could put sand in it. You could put all kinds of stuff in it. So again, I'm not saying to become a pack rat. I'm not saying to start keeping everything, and make sure you rinse them out, because if you got a bunch of science experiments growing at your desk, nobody wants that. These big ones in the back, this one's huge. Again, our family, I got 2 boys and we have constantly have snacks in the pantry, and peanuts and peanut butter pretzels come in these big containers, but I repurposed them for basing materials. I've got we had a tree in the front yard die, so I broke it all apart, and I have small, medium, and large sticks. I've got a canister full of rocks. I've got a canister full of pebbles, a canister full of mulch, a canister full of dirt, one full of sand, beach sand. You never know when you're going to need this stuff, and if you have access to it and you have all these little containers, you might as well repurpose them, use them for something, and quit throwing money away. Okay, swatching your paints. I know it sounds stupid easy. It's kind of a no-brainer. You should be doing it already. If you're not, I highly suggest you start. But when you get a new dropper bottle, take a minute, open it up, and get a good healthy drop of paint on the top of the cap. A nice big bubble. Make sure you shake it up really well. Get a nice big bubble of paint on there, and just let it dry. So then in the future, anytime you need to know exactly what that color looks like outside of the bottle, you can pick it up, you can look at the cap, and you know exactly what that color looks like. Same thing with paint pots, P3 and others. You can open them up, get a little dab on a paintbrush, put a little circle. You don't have to paint the whole lid, or, go ahead, knock yourself out. But get a good representation of what that paint looks like outside of the pot on the lid. And then anytime you're using these paints in the future, you can pick them up, you can look at them, you can see exactly what that color is going to look like when it's dry. And the other thing you can do is you can hold colors next to each other. So for example, before you even open paint and put it on your palette, you want to see what colors look like next to each other to see if they're going to work. Maybe you're trying to pick out a triad, or maybe trying to do some flames. Pick out the colors you think you need to use and look at them next to each other. You can see the swatches on the lids, you can see them in the same light at the same time, and you can see exactly how those are going to look with each other. So maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. But you have the opportunity to change it now before you start dumping paint out. The other thing that's really helpful is the finish that things dry. Are they shiny? Are they matte? So this Vallejo Special Effects, you can see the vomit and the shiny blood. Those are really, really wet and shiny looking, and the verdigris and the mud are really matte and chalky. These fluorescents, it lets you see how saturated they are. The blue is really saturated, the yellow is perfect. So swatching helps. Or not, maybe not. Pro Acryl, I just switched over not too long ago. I'll do a video about that another time, but you can see that they put swatches on the front of the labels. So I wanted to test them, and you got to understand that you're looking at wet liquid acrylic paint on a Q-tip versus a CMYK printed image that's susceptible to humidity and all kinds of stuff. So printing's funky, but these blue, the red, they match. They look really well. I get a good representation of what's in that bottle without having to open it and squirt it out every time to check the color. And with these tops on these bottles, you'll see a little bit collected up there, but it's not like you can really swatch these bottles. But either way, look at the purple. It's really, really close. None of them match. Again, you're looking at a wet liquid versus a printed laminated sticker on a bottle. But these swatches are awesome. So kudos to Pro Acryl. So hopefully all of you know what I mean when I say silly putty, but if you don't, this is Silly Putty. It's a rubber type, clay type toy marketed for kids. And when I was a kid, you used to be able to put it on newsprint and peel up the words, or put it on the comics in the newspaper and peel them up. And it always came in this kind of flesh colored ball. And if you got it in the carpet, your mother would beat you silly. Well, nowadays you can get it in metallics. You can still get it in the default color, but yeah, metallics, you can find it in glow in the dark colors. You can find it in really bright colors. You can find 4-packs, you find it at the dollar store, it's all over the place. So when you can, whenever you find it, grab a couple eggs. Wait a minute, maybe that's why I like this stuff so much. I never clicked on that. Anyway, grab a few eggs worth of silly putty and leave it on your desk. You'll find a use for it really soon. So you can see right here, you can stretch it out, you can shape it, you can fold it, you could use it for just generic masking to cover off a piece while you airbrush or paint. Now, I said earlier it behaves differently. It's made of silicone and or some type of petroleum, so it'll stick to silicone, like your wedding rings, your shaper tools. I strongly suggest using metal tools or using plastic tools and take off any silicone wedding rings. You can get the stuff off, it's just kind of a pain. So yeah, the benefit of it behaving differently is that when you stretch it out and get it thin, you can snap it if you pull it really quickly. So you can stretch it out. If you get it too thin, then it just turns to ribbons in your fingers and you fold it out and try again. But when you snap it, you get these clean edges and you can continue to stretch it out, pull out a few more pieces and get yourself a whole bunch of these laid out with these, nice clean edges. And you can even intentionally make curves if you know you want to curve it ahead of time. And I'll show you the point of all these edges is that you pick up a model that you're either going to start painting or you want to paint something new. Let's say for argument's sake that this character is entirely done, but I want to change the way I did the metal on his abdomen and on his shoulder. I don't want to mess up the beard or the flesh or any of the other cool detail work I did, but there's parts that I need to edit. So you can take these pieces that have these clean edges and see they just line right up and they tuck underneath really easily. And you don't need to use a ton of tools to work this stuff. You can usually get by with doing most of it with your hands. But you can see very quickly you can mask off an entire section very quickly. So then you could come back in with an airbrush and lay in a new color, or come back in and dry brush for an additional layer of highlights without the risk of messing up the rest of your model. And look how cleanly that stuff peels off. It doesn't leave behind any chunks. I've never seen it stick to paint. It doesn't peel off any of your previous work. It behaves differently than anything else I've used. So find some silly putty, keep a giant ball of it on your desk. You will find a use for it, I promise. Okay, one thing that every wet palette needs is replacement paper, and most of it is parchment paper. Now, I'm sure somebody's going to argue that somebody's got a proprietary paper, whatever. For the most part, it's parchment paper. Don't get it confused with wax paper. Wax paper is not going to let fluids or moisture pass through it, but parchment paper will. You can get a couple rolls of this, keep it at your desk. It's pretty cheap, but cut some sheets down is the point. Whether you bought a palette like the Redgrass palette or Masterson's Army Painter, whatever wet palette you're rocking, it probably came with a handful of sheets of this paper, and then you run out and you're like, oh, I got to go online, I got to buy more and pay whatever price they want me. You're going to get 50 sheets for $50 or whatever. So no, I did the opposite. This is an old bacon box that I use. This has been on my desk for like 7 years now. I got this idea from Chris Bilal way back in the day, and I've modified it. I added a little plastic insert that keeps the edges down and whatnot. But when I'm working and I want to change out my paper, I keep some chopped up and clipped between some cardboard so that whenever I want to change it out, I can open up the palette, pull out that insert, try not to get gold paint on my finger in the process, and pull out the old sheet, and I have a whole bunch of other sheets ready to go. So yeah, to keep them from curling, I usually keep them clipped between some cardboard. And when I'm not filming for a video, I usually pull them out without mangling an edge like that. And again, without getting gold paint all over my fingers, which somehow I managed to do with the camera running. Yay! So the point is still this: you can have a ton of these pieces already cut down and ready to go and set off to the side. So when you're working and you make a mess and you need to replace the paper, you don't have to spend a ton of time doing it, and you don't have to spend a fortune buying replacement sheets. So yeah, take some time, find a roll or two, and if you use a wet palette of any kind, parchment paper is your friend. at the hardware store, on the row with all the air filters for air conditioners, you can find these sheets called cut your own size or cut your own filter, whatever. And if you own an airbrush Spraybooth, these things are a godsend, okay? It's raw filter material you can cut down to whatever size you need for $6. If you've had to replace your filters, you know they're like $20 for a 4-pack online. So this is way cheaper, and let me show you real quick how the math breaks down. The filter's 20 by 30, and our booth filters are 16 by 7.5, which works out perfectly to 4 wide, and then you're really only wasting a 4-inch strip across the bottom. If you wanted to Frankenstein and cobble that together into a 5th filter, you could. I use it for other stuff around the shop, but either way, split off that bottom 4-inch strip first, split what's left down the middle, and then split the left and right halves, and you're gonna be left with 4 even pieces. Take your time, cut them well. You don't want one to be too tight and one to be loose. It's not very difficult to cut the material. It's easy to cut through just with regular scissors. And then you can start taking your booth apart to change out the filter. Take out your turntable. I have that fancy little fake floor in there because mine is gnarly and nasty inside, so I hide all the mess. And then you want to pull out this back frame. It's plastic, so be careful, you don't want to break it. And there's rubber feet. There's a rubber foot at each corner on the bottom. So you want to pull out from the bottom first, get that out up and towards you, and try not to manhandle it too much. You don't want to make a ton of dust and breathe this crap in, because if you're changing it out, there's a reason. It's probably pretty gnarly, and I wouldn't want to breathe that crap in. So try not to generate as much dust as you can. Get that filter in the trash ASAP. But yeah, yuck, dude. Let's get rid of that. And you can enjoy a montage of me cleaning the inside while I point out, somebody asked if these actually work worth a damn, and I've been using this same filter sheet for about 7 years. I've replaced dozens of these, and none of the fan or inner workings have paint on them. So is it perfect? I don't know. Is it working? Yeah, works well enough for me. So here you can see I chopped down 4. I'll get ready to put one in here in a minute, and I'll have 3 extras, but it's not too difficult. It's not too expensive. And I think as often as I change these out, it saves me a fortune, and I don't have to keep ordering these so I can buy other stuff. Buy more paints, right? So yeah, take that frame again. I tried to brush mine off and get some of the junk off of it, clean it up a little. There's 2 little notches. Those go towards the top. It's easy to forget. Just pay attention which way it goes up. It's the top has 2 angles, 2 holes, and there's notches in the edge. Slide the top up and in first, and then get those bottom corner over those rubber feet again. Sometimes it's kind of a pain in the ass. Sometimes you'll actually get one of those rubber feet pinched in there, and then you got to sit there and mess with it and jangle it and wiggle it around until you get the rubber foot out and get it seated properly. But it's not really too difficult. Sometimes it's just mildly annoying. But then you get the filter to clip right into place. It sits in there perfectly, and we're ready to go. So I'll put my fancy little fake floor back in to hide how nasty my booth is. And when I do use the booth, I actually just flip that floor over so that the paint goes on the bottom of that and not everywhere else. And then turntable goes back in, and I'm good to go. I'm ready to make a mess with a whole new set of colors and primers. And I've got extra filters ready to go. I've got 3 more laying in the weight. They can be tucked in a cabinet or stuck behind a shelf somewhere, and you're good to go. So make your own filters, don't buy them. Okay, so 8 things, not 7, that I wish I knew when I started in this hobby. The last one was kind of a bonus. Maybe it doesn't apply to everybody, but I find it really helpful. So yeah, that was the whole point of putting this list together. A handful of little things, put them together in one video. Hopefully this helps you or gives you a good idea, something that can help save you money. Then you can buy more paint, do something differently, improve your workflow, whatever. And having said that, thanks for hanging out this afternoon, but I'm gonna cut this short because I wanna get this edited, I wanna get it uploaded, and I wanna move on to the next video. So that's it, man. We're done for today. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you in the next one.